Have you ever loved someone, only to pretend you did not? What if your heart awakened in a lie you helped create? He was a millionaire, CEO, cold, focused, untouchable. She was his quiet secretary, observing, wounded, unseen, one snowstorm, one fake relationship, one kiss that was never part of the deal. Suddenly, everything felt real. But when the world watched, he stepped back, and she was left wondering, was she just a cover story? Now imagine this was you. Would you stay to fight for something real? Or would you walk away to protect your own worth? This is a story about choices, about silence, about love that was never supposed to happen, but somehow did. If you believe in second chances, in quiet strength, in love that grows through pain, stay with us. If this story speaks to you, comment 1. If you think this video could be better. Comment 2, we are listening. The snow had just begun to fall gently on the streets of Aspen. It was early December. The resort town was already lit up with warm string lights and evergreen garlands. Everything looked festive, calm, almost unreal. But for Claire Bennett, calm was the last thing on her mind. She stood outside the main conference hall of the Northview Mountain Resort. The wind stung her cheeks, but it was nothing compared to the heat rising under her skin. She had just finished a tense conversation with her boss. Ethan Graves, CEO of Graves Group, architect, strategist, the man who could build a skyscraper from a sketch and break a deal with one cold stare. He was also the man she worked beside every day for the last 3 years. He had barely raised his voice. He never did. But the way he looked at her, controlled, disappointed, a little too sharp, still cut deep. She closed her eyes and took a breath, trying to let the cold soothe her. Then she heard it. A shudder. A soft click. And another. Claire turned. Too late. A man in a dark coat had disappeared into the trees near the path. A camera strap dangled from his wrist. Claire's heart sank. She looked around. Ethan had just walked away a few seconds ago. He had stopped at the base of the steps, standing under the soft glow of the overhead lights, and she had instinctively followed him, closing the distance, maybe a little too closely. They had been standing face to face, alone. To anyone watching from the outside, it might have looked like something else. And then, the next morning came. The photo was on every tabloid site by sunrise. Winter Whispers. Ethan Graves and his mysterious assistant One Shot captured Claire looking up at him, her eyes filled with frustration. But to a camera lens, it looked like admiration, even intimacy. Another shot showed Ethan's hand mid-gesture, but the angle made it appear as if he was brushing her shoulder. The headline sold itself. Claire nearly dropped her coffee mug when she saw it. Her phone lit up. Messages poured in. She ignored all of them, except one. It was from Ethan. Come to my suite. 9 sharp. Room 704 was on the highest floor. Claire stood in front of the door, heart pounding. She was not sure what she feared more, the accusation or the silence. Ethan opened the door the moment she knocked. He was dressed as usual. Black slacks, a gray sweater, not a hair out of place. The windows behind him flooded the room with mountain light. He stepped aside. She walked in. He shut the door behind them. No words for a full 5 seconds. Then he spoke. The press has picked it up. Claire nodded. I know. He walked to the table and picked up his tablet, scrolled, turned it toward her. One site had over 300,000 shares overnight. Investors were starting to ask questions. His assistant, his private life, the sudden attention. Claire felt her hands clench. I did not plan this, she said quietly. I know. That was all he said. He turned away again, but not before she caught the flicker of something else in his eyes. Not anger, not blame, just calculation. She had seen that look before. It was the same one he wore before flipping a business negotiation upside down. When he turned back to her, his tone was calm. I have a proposal. Claire blinked. Excuse me. He folded his arms. They already believe it. The rumors, the whispers, and in some ironic twist, it is working in our favor. Claire frowned. How is this? A favor? He walked toward her slowly, paused a few steps away. The investors from Halbrook Holdings. They were hesitant. They needed to see more stability, personal trust, emotional maturity. He gave a faint smile. And now, thanks to a few pictures, they think I am in a steady relationship, with someone grounded, someone real. Claire stared at him. You want me to play along? He nodded once. Until the end of the summit, just a few days. Appearances only, nothing more. Her chest tightened. This is a mistake. Maybe, but a useful one. Claire turned to the window. The snow had thickened outside. The town below looked peaceful, untouched, but inside her, everything was unraveling. She crossed her arms. You expect me to lie? I expect you to protect the company, he said. Do not twist this into duty, she replied. He tilted his head. Claire, you are free to walk away. I will not force this. But if you agree, it helps us both. Claire closed her eyes. There was too much at stake. The project they had worked on for 2 years, the promotion she had nearly earned, her future, her reputation, and worse than that, there was something about the way Ethan looked at her now. Not like a boss, but like a man trying to understand something he never dared explore before. She opened her eyes, took a breath, and said quietly, just until the summit ends. He nodded once, understood. She turned to leave. But just before she reached the door, he added, one more thing. She looked back. If we are going to fake this, we will need to practice. Claire spent the rest of the day trying to act normal. She took notes during meetings, smiled politely, answered questions about schedules and transport arrangements. On the outside, everything seemed in place, but inside, nothing was in place. Every time she looked up, she saw Ethan, sitting 2 rows ahead, speaking clearly, calm, focused, as if he had not asked her, just hours ago, to fake a romantic relationship. He had said it so simply, like he was offering a new project, like he was asking her to coordinate a calendar event. She kept hearing his words. If we are going to fake this, we will need to practice. Practice. The word echoed. She hated how clinical it sounded. As if what people shared, what she once lost, could be rehearsed, could be constructed like one of his buildings. Her hands tightened slightly over her notebook. She forced herself to keep writing. That evening, the wind howled through the pine trees outside the resort. Claire returned to her room, small, quiet, warm. The lamp on the side table gave off a soft, yellow light. She stood in front of the mirror, still in her work blouse, hair slightly tousled from the wind. Her face looked calm, but her eyes, they always gave her away. She sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at her phone. No messages, no news, only the echo of her own thoughts. Was she really going to go along with this? What would her mother say? What would Daniel have said? She paused. She had not thought of him in months. Not really. Daniel had died on a rainy highway just 6 weeks before their wedding. A truck driver, asleep at the wheel. Nothing anyone could have done. The grief had not crushed her instantly. It came in waves, quiet, slow, unexpected, like tonight. She closed her eyes and exhaled. Let go. But her voice shook. The knock on the door came exactly at 7 p.m. Claire opened it to find Ethan standing there, wearing a navy coat over a dark gray sweater, no tie, no briefcase, but still somehow formal. He looked at her for a second. I made a dinner reservation. For two. She blinked. He continued, casual enough, a local lodge, public enough for the investors to see, but not too exposed. She stood there, no words, just a quiet, complicated ache building behind her ribs. Then she nodded. Give me 5 minutes. They walked side by side through the snow-covered path to the lodge. It was only 2 blocks down from the main resort. Small, rustic, candlelit windows, wooden beams. The restaurant smelled of roasted meat, pine, cinnamon, the kind of scent that brought memories, childhood holidays, old comfort. They were seated near the window, not too close, not too far. Claire could feel eyes on them, whispers, glances. A few tables over, she saw 2 board members from Hallbrook Holdings. They looked up, smiled politely. Claire returned the smile. Ethan leaned slightly toward her. Keep your hand on the table. Tilt your body this way. She frowned. Excuse me. Just trust me. A little closeness. Natural gestures. She stared at him. This is not theater. His voice was low. It is perception. That is all. Claire hesitated, then slowly rested her hand on the table. Ethan gently shifted his chair a few inches toward her. From a distance, it looked casual. Up close, she felt her heartbeat in her throat. Dinner arrived. Conversations around them rose and fell in soft waves. Ethan kept his tone light. He asked about her hometown, her time in college, her love for music. It surprised her. He rarely asked personal questions. He listened, nodded, sometimes gave a half smile that almost reached his eyes. For a moment, Claire forgot she was supposed to be pretending. Until dessert came, and Ethan did something unexpected. He reached across the table, not far, just enough to brush his fingers against hers. It was subtle, but to anyone watching, it looked real. Claire held her breath. She looked up. Their eyes met. There was something unspoken in his gaze. A pause, a quiet search for something even he might not have named. Then he looked away, picked up his coffee, as if nothing had happened. On the walk back, neither of them spoke. The snow had slowed. Street lamps cast golden circles on the ground. Claire's boots crunched softly with each step. At the entrance of the resort, Ethan stopped. I will walk you to your room, he said. She nodded once. At her door, she turned to face him. There was silence for a moment. Then she spoke. If we are doing this. Ethan. He waited. She took a breath. I need boundaries. Of course. No physical contact unless necessary. Agreed. No late-night visits. No unscheduled dinners. He nodded again. And this ends the moment the summit ends. His voice was calm. Yes. It ends. She paused. Searched his expression. It was unreadable. Professional. Controlled. But for a split second, she thought she saw something else behind his eyes. She shook it off. Good night. Good night. Claire. She closed the door and leaned against it. Her chest rose and fell with a quiet rhythm. She whispered into the stillness. What have I just agreed to? The next morning came with silver clouds and soft flakes of snow drifting past the window. Claire stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of her cream blouse. Her fingers moved slowly, almost mechanically. Last night felt like a blur. The dinner, the conversations, the subtle brush of his fingers across hers. She kept replaying that moment, again and again. It was small, barely a second, but something about it felt too honest, too unplanned. She shook her head. This was not real. It was an agreement, nothing more. Downstairs, the main lounge of the resort was already busy. Business leaders mingled over coffee, laughter mixed with quiet strategy. Ethan was speaking with the head of Holbrook Holdings near the fireplace. He saw Claire enter and gave her a small nod. She walked toward him, calm on the surface. Her heels clicked softly on the polished wooden floor. As she approached, he turned slightly. Claire, this is Mr. Harlan. He asked how we met. Claire smiled politely. Nice to meet you, Mr. Harlan. The older man gave her a warm smile. I must say, you both look like you have known each other for years. Claire's throat tightened for a split second, but she kept her tone steady. We work closely, every day. You get to know someone that way, Ethan added, without missing a beat. And she still puts up with me. Mr. Harlan chuckled. That takes patience. Ethan glanced at Claire. You have no idea. The moment passed with light humor, but Claire could feel the undercurrent. He was adjusting easily. Too easily. Later that day, the resort hosted a private cocktail event for senior delegates. A string quartet played in the corner. Candles flickered along the stone walls. Glasses clinked. Soft chatter floated through the air. Claire stood near the window, her wine untouched. She had never liked crowds like this. The pretending, the noise, the forced smiles. She took a slow breath, then felt Ethan approach. You doing all right? He asked quietly. She nodded, just tired. He looked at her for a second, then offered his arm. We should mingle. She hesitated, then took it. Their walk through the crowd was smooth, coordinated. They greeted people with ease, answered light questions, laughed when expected. They moved like a pair, a convincing one. Claire kept her smile steady, but inside, something kept shifting. Each time Ethan looked at her, each time he placed a gentle hand on her back, each time he asked, quietly, if she was okay, it was like playing a part that started to feel real. After the event, Claire stepped outside for air. The cold bit at her cheeks, but she welcomed it. She leaned against the wooden railing of the patio. The stars above were dim behind thick clouds, but the silence was comforting. Footsteps approached behind her. She did not turn. You always disappear after these things, Ethan asked softly. Sometimes, she replied. He stepped beside her. They stood in silence for a few moments. Then she said, You are good at this. At what? Pretending. He looked at her, his voice quiet. So are you? She gave a short laugh. Maybe too good. The words left her before she could stop them. Ethan stayed silent. Then, without looking at her, he spoke. When I was in college, I watched my father lose everything in a business merger. His pride, his health, everything. Claire turned slightly, surprised. He spent his whole life acting strong, but inside, he was hollowed out. I promised myself I would never be that kind of man. But sometimes, I wonder. She looked at him. This was not performance, not strategy, just memory, and maybe regret. Claire's voice softened. You are not him. He nodded slowly. I know, but I keep building walls. Even now. A beat passed. Maybe I do not know how to stop. Claire looked away. I know that feeling. Later that night, Claire lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. There had been no more lines drawn, no more terms discussed, only a growing silence filled with things unspoken. She knew she should be careful, she knew the rules, but something inside her whispered, "You are already in too deep." The snow fell heavier that afternoon, not the soft, gentle kind, but thick, relentless, piling fast across rooftops, windows, and pine branches. The resort had just finished lunch service when the power flickered once. Then again, then everything went dark. A low murmur moved through the lobby. Staff moved quickly, flashlights appeared, emergency protocols began. Claire stood by the window, watching the sky turn gray-blue. The snow was coming sideways now, wind howling like a warning. A manager approached her. "We have to evacuate the upper levels. Just for the night. Fire risk with the backup system. Guests will be reassigned." Claire nodded. She turned to look for Ethan. He had already crossed the lobby. His eyes met hers, wordless, calm, but sharp. A few minutes later, they were handed a key, cabin 3, on the edge of the resort property, one of the last available spaces. The manager spoke quickly. "It has a fireplace, emergency lights, a generator. You two should be fine for the night." Claire opened her mouth. To say what? She was not sure, but Ethan took the key before she could. He thanked the man, then turned to her. "Let us go." The walk to the cabin was slow. Snowflakes whipped through the air. Their boots sank deep into fresh powder. Claire pulled her coat tighter, scarf around her chin. By the time they reached the wooden door, her eyelashes held tiny crystals of ice. Inside, the cabin was simple. One room, a stone fireplace, 2 armchairs, a thick rug, a small kitchenette, and one bed in the corner, covered in soft flannel. Claire set her bag down slowly. Ethan lit the fire without a word. Soon, warm orange light danced across the wood-paneled walls. She sat by the window. He poured 2 mugs of tea from the emergency kettle, handed one to her. Silence filled the room like a thick blanket. She finally spoke. "So, this is new." He sat down across from her. Unexpected, but manageable. Claire smiled faintly. "You always say that. What manageable?" He looked at her, and you always notice. They held eye contact longer than usual. She looked away first. The hours passed slowly. They talked, softly, about ordinary things, the noise at breakfast, the investor from Texas who wore too much cologne, the waitress who remembered Ethan's coffee order perfectly. It was the first time in days they had spoken, without pretending. At one point, Claire sat back, her fingers warmed by the fire, and she asked, "Why me?" He looked at her. She added, "Out of everyone you work with, why ask me to play this role?" He paused. His answer came quiet. "Because you would tell me if I crossed a line, and you would mean it." She blinked. He continued, "You do not try to impress me. You are not afraid of silence. You do your job better than anyone I know. And yet, you have never once tried to be noticed." Claire looked down at her mug. A part of her wanted to thank him. Another part wanted to run. She chose neither. By nightfall, the snow had blocked most of the windows. The storm howled like a warning beyond the thick wooden walls. Claire stood by the bed, brushing her teeth with the travel kit she always carried. Ethan rolled out a blanket on the floor beside the fireplace. She looked over. "You are not sleeping on the floor. It is fine. It is cold down there." He looked at her. "I do not want to make you uncomfortable." She paused. "I trust you." Simple words. But they stayed in the air longer than they should have. He stood up slowly. She pulled back the blanket and moved to one side of the bed. He climbed in, careful, staying far on his side. backs to each other, no words, only the sound of wind outside, the soft crackle of the fire. Claire stared into the darkness. Sleep did not come. Her mind refused to settle. She kept thinking about his words, the way he looked at her, and the quiet way he kept his distance, respectfully, gently, even when no one else was watching. Somewhere after midnight, the power returned. A faint buzz filled the room as lights flickered, then dimmed again. But by then, Claire was half asleep, drifting between dreams and memory, and just before she let go completely, she felt it, a warm hand, gently, not to pull her close, not to ask for anything, just resting softly over hers. No pressure, no demand, just presence. She did not move away, and neither of them said a word. Morning arrived quietly. Light filtered through the frosted windows of the cabin. A pale blue glow touched the floor, the chairs, the blankets. Claire opened her eyes slowly. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she felt it. Warmth, steady, real. Ethan's hand was still resting lightly over hers. He was asleep, breathing slowly, his brow relaxed. She watched him for just a second longer than she should have. Then she gently pulled her hand back. Not because it felt wrong, but because it felt right, too right. They returned to the main resort before noon. The snow had slowed, but cleanup crews were everywhere. Branches hung low with weight. Paths had been cleared in narrow lines. Neither of them spoke much on the walk back. Inside the lobby, people greeted them with casual smiles. Most assumed they had shared the cabin as a couple. Let them assume. Claire could not decide what bothered her more. That no one questioned it, or that she no longer did either. In the evening, there was a formal dinner. Investors, partners, press. Claire wore a deep blue dress. Simple, long-sleeved, elegant. Her hair was pulled into a low twist. Ethan wore a charcoal suit with no tie. They looked like they belonged together, and that frightened her. The ballroom lights shimmered on the polished floor. Ethan placed a gentle hand on her back as they entered. People turned to look. Some whispered, some smiled. Claire kept her posture straight, her smile calm. Inside, her thoughts raced. This was supposed to be pretend, but his hand, his presence, the way he leaned down to speak softly in her ear, none of it felt pretend anymore. After dinner, they slipped away from the crowd into one of the quiet side halls. It was lined with framed photographs of mountain views and old resort guests. Soft lights lit the space. Ethan stopped, turned to face her. Claire looked up. His voice was low. "We do not have to keep doing this." She blinked. "What do you mean?" He stepped closer. "This game, this role. I do not want to blur the line anymore." Claire stayed still, then whispered, "I thought we were doing fine. I am not." His eyes searched hers. "When I look at you now, it is not part of the plan." Silence filled the hallway. Thick, quiet. Then he reached for her hand, not with pressure, just enough to let her choose. And Claire did not pull away. He looked into her eyes, then leaned in. Carefully, almost cautiously, their lips met, softly, slowly, no hunger, no rush, just truth. For one suspended moment, everything was still. Even the ache in her chest faded, even the doubt, even the memories, and then she pulled back, gently, eyes wide, her voice a whisper. "I cannot." Ethan did not move. He waited, let her speak. Claire stepped back. Her breath shook. I am sorry. I thought I could do this, but I cannot blur the line either. He nodded slowly. His voice was even. Okay. But in his eyes something broke. Not anger, not confusion, just quiet. Disappointment. Claire turned and walked away, each step heavier than the last. She did not cry. Not yet. She just felt the weight of something unspoken settling over her shoulders. She reached her room, closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in weeks, she let herself cry. Not because of Ethan, but because of what she was still holding on to, and what she was still afraid to lose. The days that followed felt different. Claire avoided long conversations, kept to her schedule, stayed late at meetings, left early from events. She needed space, or at least, that was what she told herself. Truth was, she was scared. Scared of what that kiss had unlocked. Scared of how easily she had let herself feel it, and scared of what it might mean if she felt it again. Ethan noticed. Of course. He said nothing. But Claire saw it in the way he moved. More quiet, more distant, still polite, still present. But something was missing in his eyes, something that had been there in that cabin. She tried to ignore it, but it followed her, in every glance across the table, in every moment of silence between meetings. In the coffee he left at her desk, still hot, still with just the right amount of milk. On the third day, the summit held a site visit. Guests were invited to tour a nearby construction site, a future eco-lodge project Ethan's firm was developing. Claire hesitated, but her name was already on the list. She climbed into the last shuttle bus just before departure. Ethan was not on board. That made it easier, or so she thought. The road up the mountain was narrow and icy. The bus driver moved slowly, carefully. They reached the site just after noon. Snow still covered the ground, but workers had cleared a wide walking path. Claire walked the trail alone, a clipboard in hand. She kept her head down, focused, measured, until she heard it, a sudden crack, then shouting, then silence. Claire turned sharply. One of the smaller bridges, an old temporary beam, near the far edge of the site, had collapsed. A worker had been crossing. She ran, not thinking, just moving. Mud and snow slid under her boots. People shouted in the distance. She reached the edge and saw the man below, pinned by a fallen plank. Struggling to breathe, Claire knelt down instinctively, reached for his hand. I am here. I will get help. Her voice was calm, firm, but her hands trembled. Moments later, another voice came behind her, low, solid, familiar. Claire, move back. I will take it from here. She turned. Ethan was already beside her, kneeling, coat soaked at the hem. He did not ask why she was there. He just took charge, and she let him. He rolled up his sleeves, called for tools, directed the others clearly, calmly. Not a single word wasted, not a second delayed. Claire watched as he worked, with strength, with purpose, and with something else. A quiet fire that she had never seen so clearly before. He freed the worker, helped lift the beam, made sure the injured man was stable. Only then did he sit back, breathing hard. Mud streaked across his shirt. The ambulance arrived minutes later. The rest of the guests were sent back down the mountain. Claire rode the second shuttle, silent, heart pounding. When she reached her room, she peeled off her coat, sat down slowly. She could still feel the cold in her fingers, still see Ethan's eyes as he worked. Not for the cameras, not for credit, just because it needed to be done. That night, there was a knock at her door. Claire opened it slowly. Ethan stood there. His clothes were clean, hair still damp from a late shower, a bruise forming on his wrist. She stepped aside. Let him in. They did not speak at first. Then she said, "You should rest." He shook his head. "I could not sleep. Not until I saw you." Claire sat on the edge of the bed. He remained standing. Then he spoke again. "When I saw you run toward that bridge," he paused. "I thought I would lose my mind." Claire looked up. He continued, "You could have been hurt. You should not have gone near it." Her voice was quiet, "But I had to." He stepped closer. Why Claire hesitated, then answered, "Because it is what you would have done." The silence that followed was heavy, but not cold, just real. He sat beside her now, closer than he had all week. He said nothing more. She leaned into his shoulder, said only 4 words. "I was scared too, and for the first time since the kiss." They both stopped running. The morning came with chaos. Claire opened her email and froze. 12 messages, 4 missed calls, 2 links from friends she had not spoken to in years. She clicked the first one. CEO Ethan Graves and his assistant Claire Bennett. Not so private, after all, Hollywood Moneyline. The second headline stung more. Climbing the corporate ladder. Or the man. Claire shut the laptop. Her hands trembled. The article had gone viral. Paparazzi shots, out-of-context photos from the summit. Someone had even leaked a blurry picture of them outside the cabin during the storm. And worst of all, a video, just a few seconds. Ethan brushing her back, Claire laughing lightly, their eyes meeting. It looked intimate, too intimate. She walked through the resort lobby later that morning. Conversation stopped as she passed. Someone whispered behind a coffee cup. Someone else looked away too quickly. Claire kept walking, chin high, but her heart was sinking. She reached the elevator, pressed the button. The doors closed behind her, and only then, in the silence, did she let her shoulders fall. Upstairs, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She ignored it. Then the hotel line rang. She picked up. Claire Bennett. A voice answered. "Miss Bennett, this is Andrea Fielding. I am calling from Graves Group PR." Claire closed her eyes. "I am listening." The voice was polite, efficient, cold. "We are preparing a brief statement to control the narrative. It will frame the interaction as light speculation, dismiss the personal aspect, standard practice." Claire tightened her grip on the phone. "And Ethan approved this? He is in a board call. But yes, he is aware." The line went quiet. Then the voice added, "We suggest you do not make any statements. For your sake and his." Click. Claire sat still for a long time. Then she stood, left her room, walked down the hallway with steady steps, and knocked on the door of Suite 709. The door opened. Ethan stood there. He saw her face. He knew something was wrong. She stepped in without a word. The door closed behind them. He spoke first. "I saw the article." Claire's voice was low. "They are blaming me." Ethan's jaw tightened. You let them say I used you. I did not write the press release. But you did not stop it." Her words cut through the room. She took a breath. Shaky. "Real. I agreed to help you, to protect your image, your company." He said nothing. "I let people assume things, because we made a deal. And then, we broke the rules." Her voice trembled. "I kissed you. You kissed me back. And now that it is messy, suddenly I am the one being erased." Ethan's face changed. His voice cracked just slightly. "Claire, that is not what I meant to do." She shook her head. "I do not care what you meant." Silence. Then he stepped forward. I will fix it. How I will go public. Tell them it was my fault. Claire looked at him, her voice soft. No, do not fix it. He frowned. She continued. Just feel it. For once. Stop controlling everything. Let yourself be. Hurt. He looked at her. Really looked. And she saw it. The wall inside him. Cracking. She turned to leave. Stopped at the door. Her voice was calm. When you are ready to feel, come find me. Then she left. That afternoon, the press flooded the resort. Cameras waited at the gate. Claire stayed inside, alone. No one from the PR team followed up. No apology came. No correction was made. And still, she waited. Not for a rescue, but for a choice. At sunset, the resort hosted a closing reception. Ethan was supposed to give the final remarks. Guests gathered. Drinks in hand, music playing, Claire stood near the back of the room, her coat still on. Then, a microphone clicked, and Ethan's voice came through the speakers. Good evening. He stood under the soft light, alone, no tie, hands visible. I was asked to speak about legacy, about growth, about responsibility. He paused. I have spent most of my career trying to stay in control, of perception, of outcome, of image. He looked around the room, but I forgot that people matter more than plans. He took a slow breath. And I need to say something. Publicly. A murmur rose, but he continued. Claire Bennett is not just my assistant. She is not a rumor. She is not a tactic. His voice shook slightly. She is someone I deeply respect. And yes, someone I care about. The room went still. He added, any mistake made here was mine. And if there is blame, let it be mine too. Then he stepped back. No dramatic exit, just truth. Simple, steady, real. Claire did not move. Not at first. But then she smiled. Just a little. The first real smile in days. The next morning. Everything felt still. No reporters, no whispers, no flashing cameras. Just the sound of snow melting outside the windows. A slow drip from the roof, a quiet reminder that storms, no matter how fierce, always end. Claire sat alone in the small cafe on the east side of the resort. It was nearly empty. She held a warm mug of tea between her hands. No phone, no notebook, no schedule, just silence. The door opened. She did not need to turn around. She knew it was him. Ethan approached without speaking. He slid into the seat across from her. Not too close, not too far, just there. They sat like that for a while. No words, no tension, just presence. Claire looked out the window. Pine trees stood tall beneath the white. Birds moved from branch to branch. She finally spoke. Did your team recover from the fallout? Ethan nodded once. No lawsuits. No damage to the board. Some questions. But that is all. She sipped her tea. That is good. He waited, then asked, what about you? Claire looked down at the table. I have been thinking about leaving. She shook her head. No, not yet. He stayed quiet. Then she added, but not because of you. He leaned forward slightly. Her voice softened. I think I forgot who I was. Somewhere along the way. I started shrinking myself to fit into the edges of other people's stories. He listened. I did not want to be a scandal. I did not want to be a secret either. You never were. Maybe not to you, but to everyone else. I became a symbol of something I never signed up for. Ethan looked down at his hands. Claire continued, but I think I needed it. Not the headlines, but the pause. She met his eyes. To decide what I want, not just what I can handle. A server walked by, refilled her tea, left quietly. Ethan reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small item, wrapped in brown paper. He slid it across the table. Claire looked at it, then at him. "What is this?" "Open it." She peeled back the paper. Inside was a small, silver music box. Simple, classic. She wound the key. A slow, familiar melody began to play. She smiled. "It is the one from the cabin." He nodded. They used to sell them in the resort gift shop. I asked if any were left. Claire closed the lid softly. Let the last note linger. Then she said, "This does not fix anything." "I know, but it matters. I hoped it would." They walked together later that afternoon. No set direction, just a slow path through the pine trees. Ethan kept his hands in his pockets. Claire let hers swing at her sides. They spoke little, until they reached the frozen lake. Still, quiet, empty. Claire stood at the edge. "I used to skate on lakes like this as a kid." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Skating. That I cannot picture. I was clumsy. Fell every time." He chuckled softly. "That I can picture." She smiled. The wind picked up slightly. Claire turned to face him, then said, without rush, "I am still not sure what this is." He answered, "Neither am I, but I am not running." He looked at her, his voice steady. "Then I will walk beside you, as long as it takes." They stood in silence. No promises, no titles. Just two people, not fixed, not perfect, but trying. And sometimes, that is enough. The train ride home took 6 hours. Claire sat by the window the whole time. No laptop, no phone calls, just the hum of motion, the snow-covered fields, the occasional flash of sunlight through bare trees. Her hometown sat tucked between hills and frozen lakes. Small, quiet. She had not been back in nearly 2 years. Her mother still lived in the same white house with green shutters. The porch light always left on. A habit that never changed. Claire stepped off the platform with one bag. Her mother was waiting in a blue coat, smiling. She hugged her tightly. No questions, no judgment, just warmth. That evening, they sat by the kitchen window. A kettle hissed on the stove. Claire watched the steam rise. Her mother poured 2 mugs of tea and passed one over. "You look tired," she said gently. Claire smiled. "I am." Her mother placed a hand over hers. "You do not have to explain, but if you ever want to, I am here." Claire squeezed her fingers. "Thank you." The next morning, she walked into town. The streets were the same. The bookstore, the bakery, the old wooden bench near the corner lamp post. People smiled politely. Some recognized her, others did not. And for once, Claire did not care. She stopped by the bakery, bought 2 cinnamon rolls, her childhood favorite. On the walk back, snowflakes began to fall again. Soft, gentle, kind. She reached the front gate just as a car pulled up, a black sedan. The windows rolled down. Ethan stepped out, wearing a gray coat, no assistant, no driver, just him. Claire froze. He held up a small paper bag. "I heard the cinnamon rolls are worth the drive." She stared at him, then down at the bag in her hand. "You are too late." He smiled. "Worth a try." She stepped aside, motioned toward the porch. "Come in. It is cold." Inside, her mother greeted him with grace. No fuss, just kindness. She offered tea. Ethan accepted. They sat in the small living room, crocheted pillows, family photos, a scent of lemon polish in the air. Claire watched him. He looked settled, not polished, not tense, just present. Later. Her mother excused herself to make lunch. Claire and Ethan stepped onto the back porch. Snow fell lightly over the yard. He leaned against the railing, then said softly, "I know I should have called. You should have. But I wanted to see where you came from." Claire crossed her arms gently. "This place is not impressive. It is honest." She glanced over. "You came all this way." For that he turned to face her. "I came for you." Silence stretched between them. Then he added, "I do not want us to go back to the office and pretend nothing happened." Claire nodded slowly. "Neither do I. I do not know how to do this the right way, but I know I want to try." She looked at him. Not the man on stage, not the man in headlines, but the one standing in her backyard. Nervous. Real. She stepped closer, held out the bag from the bakery. "Here, since you missed them." He took it, grinned. "I will try not to cry." Claire laughed softly, and in that laugh, something shifted. A weight lifted, a door opened, not wide, but just enough. They sat on the porch steps, sharing cinnamon rolls, watching snow gather on the empty garden bed. No promises made, no grand declarations, just a quiet presence, side by side, and for now, that was more than enough. Claire returned to the city 3 days later. The trees along the highway were just beginning to thaw. Spring was close now, not quite there, but near enough to hope. She unpacked slowly, folded sweaters, placed her favorite mug by the sink, lit a candle near the window. The quiet felt different now. Not lonely, just still. At work, things had changed too. People smiled more, talked less behind closed doors. Some looked at her with curiosity, some with quiet respect. No one asked questions she was not ready to answer. And that was enough. Ethan did not call the day she returned, or the next. On the third day, she received an email. The subject line was simple: dinner, just you and me, no attachments, no business agenda, just a time, a place, his initials. Claire stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed only one word: yes. That Friday night, she stood outside the small Italian place near the river. Not a five-star venue, not private dining, just a cozy brick space with candles in the windows. Ethan arrived exactly at 7, wearing a navy coat, no suit, his hair slightly windswept. He smiled as he saw her. Not the confident CEO smile, but the kind that came from somewhere softer. Claire smiled back. They ordered wine, shared a plate of ravioli, talked about books, old movies, childhood pets. Nothing strategic, nothing curated, only real things, little things. After dessert, Ethan reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, laid it on the table between them. She raised an eyebrow. "What is this?" He looked at her. Not a contract, not a plan. She unfolded it. It was handwritten. A short list. 6 lines. At the top, things I want to build with you. She read each one slowly. Sunday mornings, without phones. A bookshelf that keeps growing. A kitchen that smells like cinnamon. A playlist for long drives. A small house with quiet windows. A life that is not perfect, but ours. Claire looked up. Tears welled, but did not fall. She placed the list back down and whispered, "I want those things too." They walked home under a soft night sky. Claire reached for his hand. He took it. No hesitation, just certainty. Back at her apartment, he did not stay. But before he left, he turned to her at the door. No pressure, just presence, and said, "This time, no pretending." She nodded. "No pretending," then added softly, "No fear either." Ethan smiled, the kind of smile that did not fade when she closed the door behind him. Weeks passed. Seasons shifted. Claire laughed more now. She made mistakes. He did too. They disagreed. They learned. They shared silence without discomfort. They celebrated small wins, shared old scars. One morning, Claire stood by the kitchen window. The sun was just rising. Ethan came in, holding 2 cups of coffee, handed her one, then asked, "Then, do you still think we started as a mistake?" Claire looked at him, then said, "No, just a complicated beginning." She paused, but maybe that is how the best things begin. Outside, the city was waking up. Traffic, voices, life. But inside, it was quiet, steady, whole, and just like that, what began as pretend became the most honest thing they had ever known. Sometimes, life leads us down paths we never planned. We say yes to something simple, a favor, a role, a moment of comfort, and slowly, that moment changes us. This story reminds us that love does not always begin with fireworks. Sometimes, it starts in silence, in patience, in the soft decision to stay when it is easier to walk away. Claire did not fall for wealth. She saw through the walls of a man who forgot how to feel. And Ethan, in all his success, had to learn what truly matters. Respect, vulnerability, the courage to show up honestly. In a world full of noise, the quiet choices speak the loudest. So ask yourself, when was the last time you chose what feels true over what looks right? It is never too late to begin again, to love slower, to speak kinder, to build something real, not perfect, but yours. Let this be your gentle reminder. The heart, no matter how tired, can still open. Thank you for spending your time with us. If this story touched your heart, please like the video. Share it with someone who needs a quiet reminder that love can still grow. And do not forget to subscribe to our channel. We have more stories to tell. Real stories, gentle stories, stories that heal. We are glad you are here.